Hey guys, welcome to this very special episode of TFL today because there's been so much Tesla news, Anton. And Anton Wallman is our electric car expert, and he's here in the studio all the way from Las Vegas to talk about the new Tesla Roadster and, of course, the new Tesla semi-truck. But before we get to that, Anton, let's talk about the top 5 questions about electric cars that you need to know.
Yeah, that's right. So we can start with perhaps what is actually the best-selling electric vehicle in the United States today. In the month of October, the best-selling car that has a plug that sells in the United States is the Chevrolet Bolt EV. It actually outsold the Tesla Model S and the Tesla Model X combined.
Wow.
To the tune of 41%.
How many units did they sell?
Chevrolet sold approximately 2,800 units of the Bolt.
Yep.
And if you add up the Tesla Model S and the Model X combined, it was a considerably smaller number.
Wow, so the Bolt is actually selling. I was surprised because they kind of rolled it out first in California, and then we had kind of lukewarm sales, but now that it's actually available in the rest of the country, people are buying it.
Yeah, as of September 6th, it is available nationwide. And in the weeks following September 6th, we could see that it started to become stocked in dealerships across Chevy dealers around the country.
You know, my issue with that car is it's just kind of ugly.
Yeah, well, taste is individual. Keep in mind that this is sort of geared to the European C segment,
Yeah.
which is a car that is about 417 centimeters long and about just under 70 inches wide. So this is a car which is a few inches shorter than a Volkswagen Golf and about the same width and a little taller. So when you make a car short, narrow, and tall, that is typically not the recipe for what is typically considered a
sexy,
beautiful car, right? So typically if you want to do a car that looks good, it's got to be long, wide, low, and have huge wheels on it.
Yeah, take a Coke bottle and turn it sideways.
That's right, and that's the opposite of the Bolt. So practical and automotive beauty are essentially the opposite of each other.
So even given the fact that it's maybe aesthetically a little challenging, at least in my opinion, the thing is selling, which is, I guess, good news because oftentimes the common wisdom is that electric cars will sell when gas goes above $4 a gallon, right? That's when we're really going to see kind of a supercharging or turbocharging of electric car sales. But we've had cheap gas, and yet the Bolt is selling.
Yeah, so in California, it sells primarily because people want a car for the carpool lane.
Yep.
And in other parts of the country, too, really what's going on is that Chevrolet is incentivizing the car by offering fairly cheap leases. And what is going to happen now after January 1st is that there's a very peculiar law in 10 states, these zero emissions vehicle states, of which California is sort of the leader.
Yeah, they're kind of on the
That's
coast.
Right. But then they have the northeastern states,
Right.
from Massachusetts to New York and New Jersey and so forth. Until now, automakers have been able to fulfill the minimum sale requirements by selling in only one or a few of these states. So what many of them did, like say Fiat Chrysler, they sold all of them in California, but starting January 1st, that doesn't cut it anymore.
So
they have to sell at the same percentage in New Jersey and Maryland and so forth as they do in California. That's going to be a big issue. So you can imagine the kind of low prices that they're going to have to offer on a car such as the Bolt starting in just a couple of months from now.
So what can you lease a Bolt for?
Well, the headline rate in California right now is $99 a month.
Dang.
Now, that is plus tax, plus registration, plus money down, so on and so forth. Once you've really worked yourself through the numbers, we're talking all in. It's probably north of $250, truly fully loaded with all fees and sort of zero down equivalent. But still, that is a lower number than its sale price, its MSRP, which is $37,500 and up, would tend to imply.
All right, let's go to number 4. How many all-electric SUVs did GM say they're going to be launching in the next couple of years?
That's right. So GM made an interesting, very specific statement just a few days ago, and that is that they're launching 2 crossover all-electric EVs. It's sort of an evolved Chevy Bolt. One of them will be a Buick. The other one, they didn't say, probably a Chevy. Those are coming out in the spring, summer of 2019. And then there are 5 more SUVs coming out starting right around 2021. So they will have a total of 7 all-electric, long-range, meaning over 200 miles of range SUVs coming. So 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 all-electric SUVs. That's a pretty big number. They'll have an SUV all the way up to the equivalent of a Chevy Traverse or a Buick Enclave or equivalent.
Like a 7-passenger. potentially?
Most
Three-row.
most certainly there will be at least one 3-row included in that. In fact, they were pretty clear about that.
Now, the interesting question, of course, is the next one, which is Toyota was the first one to actually introduce Americans to electric drive in their Synergy hybrid drive, right?
Correct.
But they've been very shy about actually doing just pure plug-ins because I suppose they think that the hybrid drive is the answer and that you don't need a pure plug-in. So when will Toyota enter the U.S. market with just a pure plug-in?
Yeah, so they actually did 2,600 units in a very small production run between
RAV4.
that RAV4
Yeah.
between 2012 and 2014. So that was kind of nothing. But they're going to be making a pure electric car again, and it's going to come to the United States probably in the fall of 2021, and it will be a crossover model. Think of the RAV4 again, that size and type of car. There could be more of them, but at least they'll start out with something like that. What Toyota has been waiting for is a much radically better battery, a battery that we typically refer to as a solid-state battery. Toyota has a very large internal R&D project on this, and they're also having they also have a joint venture together with Panasonic. Toyota owns 80% of this joint venture. Panasonic owns 20% of it. Of course, Panasonic is also the vendor to Tesla, so it's kind of an interesting situation. But Toyota views the current state of the batteries to be very, very bad, meaning they don't last very well in wintertime when it gets really cold, and they don't think that, Toyota sells a car that has a reputation of lasting not just 8 or 10 years, but 15, 20, 25 years and never breaking down. Toyota doesn't like that the current set of batteries may not last 15, 20, 25 years. These new batteries that Toyota will be bringing out, they believe will have a very, very long life and will be able to handle extreme weather extremely well.
All right, number two. We know that, of course, they Tesla just introduced the Roadster, and we'll talk about that because that's interesting. But there's another car that's very similar to the Roadster, and that's the e-tron, which is also coming from Audi. So what do those two have in common?
They actually have in common one particular thing, and that is that the rear axle will actually have 2 electric motors. So instead of having this rear differential, they will have 2 electric motors in the back. And that will enable the car to have extreme torque vectoring. The head of electric motors for Audi says that the car can turn like a hunting dog.
Basically turn with its rear wheels.
That's right, which will be rather extreme. So the Audi e-tron, which will manufacturing starts a year from now at the end of 2018 and should be in US dealerships in the very early part of 2019, will have a similar configuration. Now, it won't have quite as much power, and it certainly won't have a battery nearly as large as the Tesla, but the car will also be an SUV, and it will cost a lot less. They've hinted to a starting price of about $65,000, so you can buy a Tesla fully loaded for $250,000, or you can buy the Audi very practical SUV with a similar configuration for perhaps as little as about $65,000.
All right. Of course, Elon Musk had a big dog and pony show, right? He came out and he said, look over here, look over here. We've got the new truck, we've got the new Roadster, but what's the deal with Tesla Model 3 production?
Well, clearly there have been a variety of production issues with the Model 3. So he talked about some of them in terms of making the actual battery packs.
Yeah.
But there may be other problems as well in terms of the final assembly of anything from welding to just beta testing the car. The car was never really beta tested like a normal automaker will. So now employees of Tesla are driving several hundred units of this car around, beta testing this thing. How long this is going to last, nobody really knows. They've been making for the last 2 or 3 months, we think about 4 cars a day. And we think that in the last couple of weeks, maybe they've increased this pace of manufacturing to about 8 cars a day. But that is a very far cry, even at that level, from what he had promised, which was 5,000 cars per week by the end of this year. Now, he did say that that was going to be delayed till March, or maybe longer. So I think in terms of taking over the over or under of that, I think it's probably the case that it's going to be a long time until they get to 5,000 a week. I would not hold my breath to see them get there until the end of 2018.
Which speaks, of course, to the potential viability of the company, because that's really the car that's going to keep them in business. But let's do a bonus question. We always like to do that. And the bonus question, of course, is how many all-electric cars will there be on the market in 2022? And why 2022?
Well, so 2022 basically is, if you look at where the automakers are planning,
Yeah.
because the automotive cycles are very long, if you're going to make a car in 2022, you have to decide by 2017, because the testing, development, ordering, tooling, scheduling, production in factories, negotiating with the unions,
Yeah.
as Volkswagen and Audi and so forth have to do, and Porsche and Mercedes and so forth. Especially the German unions are very tight about this. You have to do it 5 years in advance. So basically, we know today the cars that are coming out in 2022.
So how many, dude?
It's just over 140 that we know of. 100. Now we're talking about all electric cars. These are not hybrids.
All electric.
These are not plug-in hybrids.
These are all EVs.
All EVs. Almost all of whom will have a range almost of over 200 miles, and many of them over 300 miles.
This is we're looking at 5 years from now.
Within 5 years from now,
yeah.
140 of them. Now, I've rounded it down just to be conservative to 100, but we're going to have so many of them already within 3 or 4 years from now that we won't be able to keep track.
All right, you're going to be much more important on this show. Hey, so let's talk about, of course, the big news from the week, and that is that Tesla rolled out the brand new Tesla semi-truck, and then in kind of a typical Apple Steve Jobs moment, and there's one more, out of the back came rolling out the new Roadster, and the numbers that Elon Musk put out there were quite fantastic.
Yeah, so basically,
1.9
you have a 200 kilowatt hour battery, 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds.
620 miles of range.
That's right. All of those numbers are doable at some point, right? Now, keep in mind that the battery to do this, if you take the weight of a Model 3 battery, that's about 80 kilowatt hours, which is about 1,050 pounds, and you multiply that, you're talking just over about 2,600 pounds.
With the current battery.
For the current battery, with that technology that is in the current Model 3, if you just wanted to scale that up. So that is one huge hunking battery. My hunch is that he is predicating this on being able to get to a next generation battery by the end of 22 in order to meet those goals. But yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing that GM really hinted to now twice, first on October 1st, and then just a few days ago in their presentation in New York, where they laid out all these other details about the SUVs and so forth, they were very clear about there's a low-slung sports car, which when you saw the silhouette, looks very much like a Corvette. So I think GM could not hint any clearer about the fact that there's an all-electric Corvette coming. They said it won't be before 2021, but it could be in 2021. So we could see an all-electric Corvette perhaps by 2021. What will they call this thing? The E-Ray, the Corvette E? Who knows? We don't know that. But you're talking Tesla now having set the bar. 0 to 60 in below 2 seconds, range 620 miles. Let's see if GM can match or exceed those numbers.
And a lot of that, of course, has to do with like coefficient of drag. You have to have it extremely low. It has to do with the next generation of battery technology. It also has to do with the fact that Tesla has to be able to stay in business until then. And I'm not sure that's a given.
No, I mean, look, Tesla obviously is losing a lot of money and so forth, but they keep raising money. So as long as they can raise money, there's no way of telling how long they can keep doing that. I mean, that's the sort of the $64,000 question to which nobody has an answer. If they couldn't raise any more money, well, that kind of answers the question as to tick, 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 tick until that's over. But on the other hand, if they can raise a lot more money, theoretically, they could last a very long time.
Yeah, and they certainly have captured a fanatical base of buyers in the way that Apple did and Steve Jobs did at the beginning of that company's history. So the buyers are loyal. They're willing to put up with a lot of stuff that I think most major car companies couldn't do. But having said that, they have like one factory in town. I don't know how many factories Toyota has, but it's more than one. It's a lot more than one.
Well, let's put it so Volkswagen has 107.
Factories.
So, that's right, and Volkswagen is bringing out 30 EVs.
Yeah.
Now we have seen, the Audi is coming out with a couple of models. Porsche's first one is coming out in 2019, and so forth. So, look, the thing is, competition will be plentiful, as we said, by 2022, which sounds far out, but it's 5 years from now. We'll have 140 models, but this starts to build almost imminently. And if the Chevy Bolt EV already outsells the Model S and the Model X combined in the US as of October to the tune of 41%, maybe, just maybe, these other next few models that are coming, most importantly near term, the Jaguar I-Pace and the Hyundai Kona EV that are coming out both during next year, will be very attractive crossover SUVs one slightly more higher end than the other one, but they'll be very, very tough competitors.
Now I know they of course also rolled out the truck. They said it'll do 0 to 60 unladen under 5 seconds. Of course, the thing about electric motors is they have a lot of torque. There are companies that are looking at potentially buying a Tesla electric truck, long haul company.
All of the trucking companies will test this thing as soon as they can get a hands on. Of course they would. Now, what Tesla didn't say is how large is really this battery? What does this battery weigh? Because if this battery weighs a lot, then the actual payload of the truck will be less.
Sure.
So these are really, really big issues, and I mean, you don't have to look around all too much to see people questioning these claims a little bit as to what's feasible. Meanwhile, Daimler, Scania, Volvo, all these other companies are coming out with electric trucks as well, and you have a difference between the focus of the really long haul versus the inner city stuff. There are a lot of little trucks that go less than 100 miles a day, not even 40 to 60, 70 miles a day, just delivering anything from furniture to food to Lord knows what inside these short. And those trucks are available pretty much right now today. Mercedes just delivered 500 of them to UPS.
Yeah, those are kind of like a little van, bigger than a van, but Tesla rolled out a full-on semi-truck.
Yes, that's right.
This is a highway truck.
That's right.
Now, I think we'd be remiss in doing this without actually talking about kind of the leader, or at least the former leader in this, and that's the Nissan Leaf. You were at the recent introduction of the Leaf.
That's
right. And I got to tell you, I was a little disappointed by the range. 140 miles is
so basically, Nissan has had a bit of a problem. They had a battery venture with NEC that they've now sold to some Chinese company recently, and the battery chemistry had all sorts of problems. It had problems in the extreme heat and so forth. So Nissan will be coming out in a year from now with a longer range battery, which we believe they're buying from LG, which will give them about 230 miles of range. Meanwhile, the car that will be hitting dealerships here in about a month from now, at the end of December, will be a 150-mile range car. Now, their price will start below 30,000, which is very favorable. And in Japan, where the car already went on sale October 2nd, it already sold basically 19,000 units, I think, in just the first month alone. So basically, it's doing very well for what it is, and the car looks so much better than the outgoing one. That's a low bar, of course, but when you see this thing in person, you'd be shocked, saying, wow, they took the old car and they made that into this. That's a pretty good design work. So they'll compete on price. You talk about $99 leases for the Bolt. If the Chevy Bolt has headline leases at $99 and their range is $238, imagine how cheap the Nissan Leaf is going to be in just a couple of months from now.
But at some point, if you're going to go buy an electric car and you've got the difference between a 238-mile car, 140, 150-mile car, I think even if the price is cheap, right? At some point, you're going to go with the 100 extra miles of range. I think, and to wait a year to start competing seriously on that, because that's really what they compete with, right? It's on range.
Yeah, well, price does matter for some people, right? I mean,
but the price won't be that.
If you know that cashmere exists, why would you buy a lamb's wool sweater, right? So the answer is yes. Clearly, GM has a huge advantage in terms of range for a car like that. But how many thousands of dollars less does a car have to be for you to be willing to accept 150 miles? And if the Bolt leases for a headline lease rate of $99, if somebody offers you a Leaf for, say, $59, well, maybe, just maybe. So, price does matter, I believe. But you're right. GM does have an advantage, and Nissan will catch up with that in about a year from now.
And then there are two other issues we have to talk about. And the most important one, of course, is government subsidies. But let's leave that for last.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Faraday Future and their slow demise.
Well, it was obvious about a year ago that this thing was probably going under. And every sign since, they've now fired the two guys that they hired from BMW, the chief engineer and the financial guy who came from Deutsche Bank or whatever it was. So they're fired, and the signs are all very bad. This is a tough business. Launching a car company, most car companies that start fail one way or the other, even though they make very fantastic, beautiful, special, exotic cars. The last, our lifetime is littered with companies that started and failed. DeLorean, you go down the list, all of them, all beautiful, exotic.
Tucker.
All of these cars were fantastic. But in the car business, what matters is scale and profitability. Scale and profitability typically go together. So, these new car companies have an enormously high wall to climb.
And Tesla doesn't actually have scale or profitability.
Well, Tesla's gotten a lot further than most of them. What Tesla's done that nobody else has done is that they've been able to raise more money. If you're raising not just $1 or $2 billion, but $10 billion or more.
You said scale and profitability.
Yeah.
One factory and no profit.
Correct.
Anyway, I'm not trying to, rain on Tesla's parade. It's incredible what they've managed to do. It's incredible what Elon Musk has managed to do. And of course, a lot of that has been in the context of government subsidies, right? Electric cars.
Tesla's done very interesting things. Building up a charging network,
Yep.
over-the-air updates, and guess what? The cars are beautiful.
They're
You add
beautiful,
those together,
gorgeous,
this is a recipe
sexy,
for
fast.
the consumer. Now they got to get to quality, they got to get to scale, and they got to get to profits, and they got to get to they have $10 billion in long-term debt now. The interest expense alone per Tesla sold last quarter is $4,500. So they pay an interest on the debt that they owe, about $4,500 per car sold. These are hurdles that the consumer may not know or care about, but they're going to be important for the company's survival.
So let's talk about government subsidies, right?
Yes.
Because Tesla also makes a lot of its money by selling credits to companies that build a lot of trucks, like Ram or
Correct.
FCA.
Yes.
And with the new administration, a lot of those are questionable.
Well, there are two types of things. So you got the federal consumer credit, right, which is the $7,500.
That's going away.
We don't know. So the House bill
Yeah.
took it out.
Yeah.
The Senate bill has it in.
Yeah.
Now they're going to vote on the Senate bill, and then they're going to have to be reconciled. So you can flip a coin. It's a 50-50 whether this thing will be in or not. And if it's in, maybe it's going to be in to a modified extent. We don't know yet. We'll probably know by about Christmas.
Yeah.
But at this point, the next 30 days is like, is a flipping a coin.
And how about the state subsidies?
Well, state subsidies are, first of all, very different, but there's a very particular state incentive, which are these ZEV credits, the zero emissions vehicle credits. They're largely run out of California, but they include 9 other states for a total of 10 states. They basically tell car companies that they have to sell so and so many pure electric cars and so many plug-in hybrids. So basically by 2025, we have to get to about 16% of all cars need to be pure EVs. And if you don't sell that many, then you have to pay up to $5,000 per credit to the companies that sell more than their minimal quota. And that's where Tesla to date has been making, if you average it out, about $75 million a quarter. Now these credits, the formula changes again now, as I said earlier, January 1st, and where you need to sell them and what you can earn and how you earn them and so forth. So it's going to be a big thing to watch. But the big theme here is that there could be a divergence between the federal policy of getting rid of the federal subsidies, but these state incentives that are going in the other direction. And that's a big clash when you think about it, a very big clash. And, we don't have the answer as to where this is going to come out, but in the next month or two, I think we'll have the first signs.
Well, this has been extremely interesting, Anton. I think I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you guys for watching. And the number that still blows my mind is at 140 EVs by 2022. Yeah,
Correct.
that suggests to me that if you guys aren't driving an EV, somebody you know or somebody in your family or maybe even you will be driving one in the next 5 years.
5 years from now.
All right. See you guys next time. And thanks, Anton. Really appreciate it.
As always, Roman.
Take care. And remember, check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, real world reviews. Ciao.